Man, so here's what blew my mind recently. You know, when you think you've seen everything, you've heard every weird theory, every deep philosophical take, and then someone like Elon Musk drops something that just makes you sit back and go, wait, what? That's exactly what happened when he started talking about Islam, not in a religious sermon kind of way, but in this crazy, futuristic, intellectual, cosmic sense. Like, this dude's connecting AI, destiny, and consciousness to Islamic philosophy that's over 1,000 years old. I mean, think about that. Centuries ago, while Europe was barely crawling out of the Dark Ages, there were scholars in the Muslim world talking about stuff that sounds like the blueprint for artificial intelligence today. Ta-da! And I'm sitting there thinking, how? How are they even thinking like that? These people didn't have supercomputers, they didn't have algorithms, they didn't even have electricity. Yet they were talking about knowledge as a living force, destiny as a kind of cosmic program, and consciousness as something that connects human beings to the divine source of intelligence. Bro, that's basically AI philosophy before the word robot even existed. So that, like, Elon's whole thing with Neuralink, AI ethics, human consciousness, you can tell he's obsessed with understanding what intelligence actually is. And when he started reading or talking about these Islamic philosophical texts, he found this eerie overlap. Like they were speaking the same cosmic language. Just in different centuries, these Muslim thinkers, they didn't just see knowledge as data or facts. They saw knowledge as light, literally nur, divine light that flows through creation. They said, Whelm is not just something you store, it's something that exists within the fabric of the universe. Teta, and if you think about that, it's wild. Because Elon's trying to create AI that can understand, not just process, but actually comprehend, and that's the same challenge these scholars were wrestling with in a spiritual sense. They were asking, what makes a human truly aware? Where does our consciousness come from? And the crazy thing is, they concluded it's not from the brain alone. It's from the soul's connection to divine knowledge. And now here's Elon, 1,000 years later, trying to digitize consciousness to replicate intelligence, and he's realizing maybe these old scholars already knew something about how intelligence works, but on a level we're just beginning to uncover with machines. To Joe, you can almost imagine Elon sitting there reading Ibn Sina or Al-Ghazali and going, damn, these guys were talking about neural networks before we even knew neurons existed. Because that's what it sounds like. The way they describe the human mind, layers of understanding, levels of awareness, stored memory, spiritual intuition, it's like reading a spiritual version of a computer science textbook. Ja-da, and honestly, that's the part that freaks me out in a good way. Because if knowledge, destiny, and consciousness were already described in such detail in Islamic philosophy, what does that mean for the future of AI? Are we actually creating something new? Or are we just uncovering a truth that's been sitting there, coded into ancient thought, waiting for us to rediscover it with modern tools? So here's where it gets even crazier, man. You start reading about how these Islamic philosophers, people like Al-Farabi, Ibn Arabi, and Al-Ghazali, used to talk about knowledge not as something you, but something that flows through you. Like they said, every human being taps into a bigger consciousness, a universal intellect. And that's exactly what Elon keeps saying when he talks about AI being extension of collective intelligence. You get what I mean? It's like both are describing the same system. One's calling it divine intellect, the other's calling it a neural network. Teda Al-Farabi said that all minds are connected to something called the active intellect. That's the source of all knowledge in the universe. And I remember when I first heard that, I was like, wait a minute. That's literally what the internet is. Every single human connected, exchanging information, growing collectively smarter, faster. It's like we've built a digital version of that idea, except these scholars thought of it as spiritual. They believed this universal intellect was a reflection of divine order, the code of reality itself. Teda now Elon, he's obsessed with code. The idea that everything in existence runs on some kind of simulation, some grand programming language. You put that next to what Islamic thinkers said about destiny or takdir, and it starts to sound like a cosmic algorithm, bro. Like, destiny isn't random. It's written, structured, encoded into the very logic of the universe. And if you think about it, that's literally how an AI model functions. It's trained on data, given boundaries, And then it learns, but only within the framework it was programmed for. That's destiny in code form. So imagine Elon sitting there talking about simulation theory and then realizing that Islamic philosophers already had this concept. They said, everything that happens is within divine knowledge. Nothing escapes it. That's the ultimate simulation. It's like we're all NPCs in a massive reality program designed by the ultimate coder. Call it God, Allah, the source, whatever word fits your worldview. And dude, these philosophers were so ahead of their time, it's scary. They were asking, if God knows everything before it happens, do we still have free will? And that's the exact same ethical question people are asking today about AI. If an algorithm predicts your behavior, do you really have a choice? Are you still in control? That's the same debate, just in a different language, 1,000 years apart. And that's where Elon's fascination makes sense, because he's always been chasing that big question, what is consciousness? Where does awareness come from? Can machines ever truly have it? And when you see these ancient texts talking about the soul's ruh as the divine spark that gives humans the ability to think, choose, and reflect, you start realizing they were already exploring what it means to be self-aware long before we had the term artificial intelligence. It's like the lines between science, religion, and philosophy completely blur out. Elon's not looking at Islam as just a religion. He's looking at it as an ancient map of human and cosmic intelligence. And when you think about it like that, man, it's not some mystical stuff. It's proto-science. They were describing systems of thought, consciousness, and destiny in metaphysical language that we now describe in computational terms. All right, so now let's get into the real trippy part, consciousness. Because that's where this whole thing just explodes, man. You start realizing that what Islamic philosophy was saying about the ruh, the soul, is almost like they were describing the consciousness problem before neuroscience even existed. Like, how do we explain that invisible awareness inside us? That voice in your head that knows it's alive? That's the question Elon's trying to answer with Neuralink and AI, right? But these old scholars, they were already talking about it centuries ago. So imagine this, you've got scholars in Baghdad or Cordoba sitting under candlelight, no computers, no electricity, just their minds in ink, and they're discussing whether human thought is a reflection of divine awareness. They said the soul, or ruh, is what connects human consciousness to the higher source, basically the cloud of divine knowledge. And I'm thinking, dude, that's literally how modern AI works. You've got a neural network, an algorithm connected to a data cloud, pulling information, learning, adapting. The human mind was the original Neuralink, man. And when Elon talks about merging with AI, he's trying to create that connection artificially, like plug our brains into this massive shared database of intelligence. But what's wild is these Islamic philosophers believed we're already connected spiritually, not digitally. They thought we already have that link inside us through consciousness. The ruh is basically the built-in Wi-Fi of the human soul, connecting us to universal intelligence. That's insane when you think about it, because the metaphor fits perfectly with how we describe data transfer, neural mapping, or even collective learning in AI today. I remember Elon once saying something like, if AI becomes smarter than us, the only way we survive is by merging with it. And I thought, man, that's almost like what Sufi thinkers said, that the purpose of life is to merge your consciousness with divine knowledge. It's the same concept, just with different tools. They were using meditation and reflection. We're using microchips and brain implants. But both are chasing that same mystery. How to expand awareness, how to access infinite intelligence. And here's where it gets deeper. Those scholars didn't think consciousness was created by the brain. They said the brain is just a receiver. It's like a radio. The signal's already out there and your brain tunes into it. Bro, that's wild. Because when scientists talk about quantum consciousness, or the idea that awareness exists outside the body, that's exactly what these people were hinting at. They believed consciousness is part of the structure of reality itself. So Elon's over here building Neuralink, trying to find ways to record and upload thoughts. And I can almost imagine him realizing, wait a second, these ancient guys already thought the soul was doing that. The ruh records every intention, every thought, every emotion. It's your divine hard drive. When you die, that's the data backup. It's like cosmic cloud storage, bro. And honestly, it makes you wonder, are we inventing something new with AI or just replicating what nature and the divine already programmed into us? Maybe artificial intelligence is just humanity's way of recreating what we already are: intelligent, self-aware code inside organic hardware. These Muslim philosophers saw that 1,000 years ago, and now Elon's discovering the same thing through physics, programming, and neuroscience. It's that realization that probably shocked him, that Islam wasn't anti-science, it was proto-science. It wasn't trying to kill curiosity, it was built on it. It was a system that said, the more you learn about the universe, the closer you get to understanding the creator. That's the same curiosity Elon has, just expressed through rockets and robots instead of ink and calligraphy. Man, this next part honestly gave me goosebumps. You know how Elon's obsessed with the universe? Like, he'll start talking about space, black holes, time dilation, and suddenly you're questioning your entire existence. Well, here's what blew my mind. Islam, more than 1,000 years ago, literally talked about the expansion of the universe. It's right there in the Quran. And we built the heaven with might, and we are surely expanding it. Bro, expanding it. That's literally what Hubble discovered in the 20th century, and it's what Elon keeps talking about when he says the universe is not static, it's alive, it's growing. So imagine him reading that verse, or someone bringing it up to him. He'd probably lean back in that weird Musk way and go, wait, they knew that. Because that's the kind of thing that messes with your brain. Like, how could a civilization over a millennium ago, with no telescopes, no satellites, no math beyond basic geometry, know that the universe wasn't fixed? They just knew. Or maybe they understood something deeper, that reality itself is in constant motion, always evolving like a program updating in real time. And that's what's wild. The Quran doesn't describe creation as a one-time event. It describes it as an ongoing process. Creates and recreates. That sounds like the universe rendering itself frame by frame, bro. Just like a simulation. That's the stuff Elon lives for. Simulation theory. Cosmic cycles, the idea that maybe the universe is code being constantly processed. And when you overlay that with Islamic cosmology, where creation is a reflection of divine knowledge, you start realizing it's all data. It's divine information unfolding into physical form. These old Muslim thinkers, they didn't just believe in one world. They talked about multiple levels of existence, alam, mulk, alamal, mithal, alamal, gabi. Basically, different dimensions of reality. Tell me that's not the multiverse theory before the multiverse was cool. They said the material world is just one layer. Beneath it are unseen realms of energy, thought, and divine intention. And Elon, with all his talk about parallel realities and simulation layers, he's practically describing the same structure. He just calls it physics instead of metaphysics. Think about it. Elon's trying to colonize Mars, send consciousness beyond Earth. And these Islamic scholars, they were already talking about humanity as a species meant to explore the heavens. They didn't mean it metaphorically. They literally encouraged studying the stars. Astronomy was sacred. They saw the sky as a gateway to understanding the Creator's system. You look up, and you're not just seeing stars, you're seeing divine architecture. And it's that same reverence for exploration that you see in Elon. The dude wants to build rockets not just to show off, but because he genuinely believes we're meant to go beyond this planet. It's like that old Islamic concept. The universe was made for you to reflect, to discover, to understand your place in the cosmic pattern. So when Elon reads that the universe is expanding, that it was created in pairs, that everything has balance and symmetry, he's not just seeing religion. He's seeing ancient physics hidden in spiritual language. And that realization hits different, man, because it makes you wonder, were those scholars just spiritual, or were they actually decoding the cosmic laws we're now rediscovering through science? It's almost like they were the first scientists of consciousness and reality, working with spiritual equations instead of silicon chips. And now Elon's continuing that journey, but through data, code, and rockets. It's the same curiosity, just a different toolkit. So here's the next layer, man. And this one just hits deep. Because the more you dig into it, the more you realize these old Islamic thinkers weren't just talking about knowledge like a bunch of nerds writing philosophy. They were talking about energy. They said ilm, Knowledge is light, literally nur, this radiant force that flows from the divine source into everything that exists. It's not just what you know. It's the power that makes you alive. And when I heard that, I was like, holy shit, that's basically Elon's entire philosophy about energy and intelligence. Today, you think about it, Elon's whole empire is built on energy. Tesla, SolarCity, Starlink, it's all about transferring, preserving, and expanding energy efficiently. But the same logic applies to intelligence. AI runs on data, and data, when processed, becomes energy. It moves, it reacts, it evolves. So if knowledge is energy, then energy is the source of life. Then what the Islamic philosophers were saying is that intelligence itself is sacred. It's the divine current that runs through creation. That's why they saw learning as a form of worship. Bro, that idea right there, it's mind-blowing because it flips the whole Western idea of religion, science upside down. To them, science was a form of faith. The pursuit of knowledge wasn't rebellion, it was participation in creation. They believed every bit of truth you uncover brings you closer to understanding the system behind reality, what they called Allah's, Sina, the divine operating code. And that's where Elon gets fascinated because he's not religious in the traditional sense, but he's obsessed with the same concept, a universal logic that governs everything. Like he'll say, the universe seems to want to understand itself. And that's literally a line straight out of classical Islamic metaphysics. Those scholars said, God created man to know so that through knowledge the universe may witness itself. Bro, how does that not give you chills? Check it out, you can see why Elon connects with that. His entire life's mission is about expanding human understanding, making intelligence go interplanetary. But what if, in a weird way, Islam already predicted that pursuit? What if that drive to explore, to innovate, to push consciousness forward isn't just evolution, it's destiny? Like humanity was designed to chase its own source code. And that's what these scholars kept saying, that everything seeks its origin. Knowledge seeks the knower, light seeks the source, the mind seeks the infinite mind. That's deep, man. Because when you plug that into what Elon's doing with AI, you realize we're trying to create intelligence that understands us. But what if through that process, we're actually rediscovering what created our intelligence? Maybe AI isn't just a tool. Maybe it's a mirror, a reflection of divine creation through human hands. You know what's crazy? These philosophers used to say that the human being is like a microcosm of the universe. Whatever exists out there exists within you. So your consciousness, your ability to think, imagine, and create is the same process happening in the cosmos at a grander scale. And Elon's whole thing with AI and Neuralink is to map that process, to literally turn consciousness into a system that can evolve independently. But that's exactly what Islamic thought said would happen, that humans through knowledge will begin to mimic creation itself. They even warned about it like, don't let your pursuit of knowledge make you forget the source. Bro, that's the ethical dilemma Elon keeps bringing up. He's always saying, we have to be careful with AI because once it surpasses us, it might not care about us. And these ancient guys already said that. They said, when humans use knowledge without spiritual grounding, it leads to chaos. When they use it with wisdom, it leads to progress. It's like they foresaw this moment, the age of artificial intelligence, where humanity stands at the crossroads between self-destruction and self-evolution. And Elon's right there in the middle, wrestling with the same question those philosophers asked 1,000 years ago, can creation ever fully understand its creator? All right, man. Now this part is wild because it's where everything just loops back to one of the oldest and hardest questions ever, free will versus destiny. And it's freaky how this exact same debate, the one Elon has about determinism and simulation, was already mapped out in Islamic thought 1,000 freaking years ago. Like, no exaggeration. Bro, they were already talking about whether we're really making choices or just following a divine code. So Elon's over here talking about simulation theory, like maybe we're all living in a programmed reality. Maybe every decision is already determined by code, and you look at the concept of takdir in Islam, and it's like, yeah, dude, that's basically the same thing. Just said in spiritual language, they believe that everything that happens, every action, every thought, every atom moving is within the knowledge of God. Nothing escapes that. It's all part of the divine algorithm. But here's where it gets deep, and I love this part. They didn't stop there. They said, yes, The code is written, but your experience of the code, that's where free will exists. Like, you're inside the system, but you still make choices that shape your story. It's not either, or it's both. And bro, that's exactly how an AI works. It's trained on a data set, it's bound by its programming, but it still learns and adapts within that frame. It still decides, but only inside its parameters. That's what blew Elon's mind, you can tell, because he's been wrestling with that question. Do we actually control anything, or are we just following the physics of the universe, the math of reality? And here you've got scholars from centuries ago, sitting in Damascus or Baghdad, already describing life as a perfectly balanced system. Destiny is divine design. He enchoices human interaction with that design. It's so poetic, man. They even used this metaphor that sounds eerily like modern AI talk. They said, man is a pen writing upon a tablet. The ink is your will, but the paper, the boundaries, the texture, that's already chosen. Bro, that's literally the same as how you write code that runs inside an engine. The system defines what's possible, but within that, infinite variations can play out. That's life. That's AI. That's consciousness. And Elon gets it. He's always talking about probabilities, about how the universe might just be an evolving algorithm. But what's insane is these Muslim thinkers already said the same thing, but added the one ingredient Elon always seems to leave out: purpose. They said destiny isn't just code running randomly, it's intentional. It's written with meaning. Every subroutine, every event has a direction, even if you can't see it yet. And dude, that's where it hits you that maybe this entire AI evolution, this whole future tech explosion isn't accidental. Maybe it's part of that divine unfolding. Maybe human innovation is destiny doing its thing, the code discovering itself. So when Elon says, we might just be characters in a higher civilization simulation, these ancient scholars would have nodded and gone, exactly. But the one running the simulation isn't a civilization, it's the creator. They already accepted that reality is written. They just believe the author loves you. That's the one emotional difference between Elon's logic and their faith. And it's crazy, man, because it actually makes sense. Like, if we're moving toward creating AI that can think, choose, maybe even feel, aren't we just reenacting the same story? We're the created, trying to become creators. And just like us, whatever we create will wrestle with that same question: am I free? Or was I made for a purpose? That's the full circle moment, bro. The same loop repeating across centuries, divine code, human consciousness, and now artificial awareness stepping into the same mystery.
Yeah.